Named Jungkook, he is the vampire king who is being cursed by witch for rejecting her beauty. What will happen when he finds his mate, who is the only solution for his curse? Will they survive together, or she will hate him for being married to him forcefully? It was the past midnight when the quiet hum of the city began to settle, leaving only the whisper of wind and the faint glow light of streetlight. The small, cozy cafe that Ryan owned was tucked away on a forgotten corner of a city, a refuge for those who sought solace in a cup of coffee and a warm, inviting atmosphere. Ryan had always felt safe, her sanctuary midst of the chaos of the world, but tonight something felt different, unsettling. As she closed up for the night, a strange chill settled in the air, one that she couldn't shake off. She noticed it for a day now, an odd sensation that seemed to follow her whenever she was alone, an eerie presence lingering in the corner of her mind. But she brushed it off, thinking it was nothing more than the creeping isolation that comes with the late hours of her shift. Little did she know the source of her unease was much closer than she realized. Jungkook, a figure of mystery and danger, had been watching her from the shadow for weeks. His piercing eye followed her every move, in every thought consumed by a strange pull he couldn't explain. There was something about her scent, something intoxicating that called him in a way he couldn't resist. It was not just her fragrance, but her aura, one that seemed to both challenging and inviting him. And as a vampire, he knew his feeling all too well desire, power, control, but his control was slipping. For centuries, Jungkook had wandered the earth, a being of darkness and fear, never once allowed himself to be tethered by anyone but Vian. She was different, her scent, her vulnerability, everything about her stirred something in him, a need to claim her, to make her his. Tonight, he decided he would finally confront her. As the clock struck midnight, he appeared at the cafe, his steps silent as he approached the locked door. The darkness, the night seemed to clinch him, his aura radiating an unsettling chill that seemed to make the air around him thick with tension. Vine froze when the door creaked open, her heart pounding in her chest. There he stood, like a shadow in a human form. His eyes were glowing faintly with an unnatural light. His gaze was predatory, and yet there was a strange allure in it that made her want to both run and stay. Jungkook, she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled, but it was not a smile of warmth. It was dark, laced with something dangerous. "You're not safe here, Ryan," he said, his voice low and velvety smooth. "There is no escape." She backed away, her breath coming faster, but his steps were faster still. He cornered her, tapping her between the counter and the wall, his presence overwhelming. The fear that radiating from her was intoxicating, and yet he moved closer. There was something in him that felt different. Something stirred inside him, a strange conflict he couldn't ignore. "You are afraid of me," Jungkook murmured, his lips gazing her ear. He revealed in a trembling, her breath hitching with every moment. "Good, you should be." Vian wanted to scream, wanted to escape, but the word died in her throat as her eyes met his. The darkened in his aura pulled her in a mixture of fear and fascination consuming her. "You think you can escape me?" he whispered, his voice like grace, but with a bite of malice beneath it. He stepped closer, his cold finger brushing her cheeks. "I came for you, Vian, to claim you. To make you see that there is no way out." Tears welled in her eyes as she tried to push him away, her hands trembling. "Please stop. I don't want this. I don't want you." Jungkook smirked, flattered for just a moment. The sight of her crying, her vulnerability, made him hesitate. His mind screamed at him to take control, to dominate, to feed on her fear. But something about her pain stirred a twisted empathy in him once he didn't understand. For the for the first time in the century, Jungkook felt something resembling guilt gnawing at him. He had come to scare her, to break her, but now, as she wept in front of him, his desire turned into something darker, something more painful. He wanted her fair, yes, but he wanted something more now. He wanted her in a way he couldn't fully comprehend. He leaned closer, his breath cold against her skin. I'm not leaving without you, Ryan. But I don't want to hurt you, he murmured, his voice softer now, as if he was struggling with every desire that had brought him here. Vine looked up at him, her tears blurring her vision, and for a fleeting moment she saw something in her eyes. Something human, something broken, but before she could process it, Jungkook's expression hardened again. You will be mine, one way or another. And you will learn, Vine. No one can escape me, not even you. With that, he vanished into shadows, leaving her alone in a cafe, her heart racing with fear and confusion. But as the night wore on, Wine couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in him. And for the first time, she wondered if she was the one who truly in danger, or if Jungkook's twisted obsession might somehow turn into something more, something far darker. The night air was heavy with anticipation as Jungkook stood in the shadow, his sharp eye fixed on the cafe window. He could feel her presence inside, her scent swirling through the night like a delicate, intoxicating perfume. It was no longer just a pull, no longer just an obsession. No, this was fate. She was his mate, the one he had been searching for across centuries, and now that he had found her, there was no returning back. His heart, dark and hardened from years of solitude, stirred with something he hadn't expected, a flicker of something softer, something more vulnerable, but he quickly buried that feeling. He had never been one to indulge in weakness, and she would learn soon enough that his kingdom, his laws, and his claim could not be denied. The cafe door swung open with a quiet creak, the bell above it jingling softly. Vine stood behind the counter, unaware of the danger that was inching closer. She was sweeping down the last of the tables, her tired eyes scanning the quiet space, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Jungkook stepped inside, his presence commanding the room in an instant. The temperature seemed to drop, the warmth of the cafe fighting to hold into its comforting embrace as a dark aura flooded the room. Vian turned toward the door, her gaze locking into the figure who had haunted her thoughts for days, Jungkook. She felt a shiver run down her spine, but this time it wasn't fear alone, it was something more, something she didn't want to acknowledge. He was too close, too dangerous, but now there was no escape. Jungkook, she whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't reply at first. He simply took a step forward, his gaze darkened with intent. You have been running from me, Vian, but you can't turn destiny. Before she could react, he was on her, his hand strong as they gripped her wrist. She gasped, the sudden force pulling her into his chest, where his heart, unnaturally cold and distant, beat in a rhythm she would never understand. Let go of me, Vian cried, struggling in his arms, but it was futile. His strength was unlike anything she had ever felt. He was a predator, a king of shadow, and she was nothing more than a pawn in his cruel games. Don't make this harder than it needed to be, Jungkook murmured, his lips grazing her ear. You are mine, Vian. There is no escape, not anymore. Her breath hitched in her throat as panic set in. What are you talking about? Please let me go. I'm not your possession. Jungkook chuckled darkly, his grip tightened. You may not understand yet, but you will. You are my mate, and I have to come to claim you. His words were like a chains, wrapping around her heart, locking her in a reality she couldn't fathom. A reality where her life was no longer hers to control. He pulled her away from the cafe, her protest echoing in the stillness of the night. But with each step, her will to resist weakened. She had always known there was something strange about Jungkook, something otherworldly that both terrified and fascinated her. But this was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Jungkook Kingdom loomed ahead, an imposing fortress made of stone and darkness, its solitudes casting long shadow against the moonlight sky. As they crossed the threshold, Vian's heart pounded with dread. She didn't know what else to expect, but she knew one thing for sure: her life as she knew it was over. The grand hall of castle was cold and vast, the walls adorned with dark tapestries that whispered of ancient power. Jungkook led her to the center of the room, his eyes glowing with cold fire. "You will be married tonight," he announced, his voice echoing of the stone walls. "You are my queen now." Wine breath caught in her throat. "Married?" she whispered in disbelief. "I don't want this. I don't want you." His gaze softened, but only for a moment. "You don't have to want it, Wine. You are mine by blood, by fate, and there is no turning back now." The words were final, and as much as she wanted to run, to fight, there was nowhere to go. She was trapped. His dark aura filled the room, consuming everything in its path, and for the first time, she realized that resistance was futile. A priestess arrived, her long robes trailing on the cold stone floor as she stepped into the room. Her face was hidden behind a veil, but her presence was unmistakable, an ancient force tied to the rights of the vampire kingdom. The ceremony began immediately. Ryan tried to refuse, tried to fight, but Jungkook's grip never wavered. He had waited centuries for this moment. He had fought the urge to claim her from the shadow, to let her decide for herself, but now the wait was over. As the ceremony unfolded, Vine felt the cold press of the crown against her forehead. Jungkook's gaze never left hers, his expression unreadable as the final words were spoken. When it was done, when she was bound to him in a marriage that had no choice, no escape, the truth became painful clear. Her body trembled in his arm, but Jungkook pulled her close, his lips brushing against her neck. Her his breath icy and intoxicating. "You belong to me now," he whispered, "and you will learn to love this wine. You will learn that there is no life for you outside of my kingdom, outside of me." As he held her there in the dark, oppressive silence of his kingdom, Wyan realized that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something far darker, far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. And no matter how much she fought, no matter how much she resisted, she knew one thing for sure: there was no escaping him. Jungkook was her mate and her master, and there was no force in the world strong enough to change that. The full moon hung in the sky, casting its silvery glow over Jungkook's dark kingdom. His castle stood like a sentinel in the night, its towers reaching up to the mid the heaven, shrouded in an air of power and ancient mystery. But within the cold stone walls, Jungkook was anything but calm. The curse had haunted his existence for centuries, was now real, tangible, and worse than anything he had ever imagined. "You are running out of time," the old witch has told him weeks ago, her voice as dry as dust, her eyes filled with cryptic warning. "But the full moon rises, you must find your mate, or you will die." It had sounded like a distant, impossible thing, a curse laid on him long ago, one that he could ignore until tonight. Tonight the moon was full and the curse was waking up, staring inside him like a restless beast. Wine, his mate, the woman who had unknowingly stolen his heart with her scent, her vulnerability, and that strange pull he couldn't explain. She was the one he had been destined to find, to claim, and to save himself from death. But she had no idea of the storm she was about to caught in. As if one cue, the door creaked open, and Wine stepped in a soft footstep, barely making a sound. She had been so quiet, so compliant since their forced marriage, and yet tonight something in her eyes was different. There was a curious spark, there a flicker of awareness, but not yet understanding. Jungkook straightened, meeting her gaze with dark intensity. The time had come, he couldn't put it off any longer. Jungkook, she whispered, her voice soft, tentative, like a bird unsure whether to fly or to stay. What's going on? Why do you look so different? He let out his deep breath, his eyes flickering with a dangerous mix of desire and desperation. Why and we need to talk about the curse. Her brow frowned in confusion. Curse? He nodded, stepping closer, his presence swallowing her space. Yes, the curse that bind me to you. The bind us both. And the thing is, we have to do something tonight. Her heart skipped a beat. I don't want to hurt you, Ryan, he said, his voice almost tender. But the curse make it complicated. You will be in a pain tonight. I can't avoid that, but it's the only way we can get through it. Ryan blinked, her chest tightened. Pain? What do you mean, pain? He stepped forward, his hand reaching for hers, but he paused. You will feel it at first, but it won't last. As soon the moon rises higher, as each night passes, you will start to change. You will become more beautiful, more alluring. It's the part of the curse. And you will have to fight myself, fight my own desire. Each night, it won't be easy for us, either of us. A shiver ran down her spine as the gravity of his word hit her. Wait, what do you mean? You will have to fight yourself. Are you saying that every night after tonight you will be tempted? Tempted to what? Jungkook sighed, running with a hand through his hair. Yes, the curse make it harder. As you change, as you become more desirable, I will want you more, but I can't give in. If I do, if I break the curse by following my every desire, I will lose you forever. You will become a part of the curse too. Vine looked up at him, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The idea of becoming more beautiful each night, more tempting, as if she were some kind of prize to be won, made her stomach churn. But she could see the conflict in his eyes, the strange between duty and desire, and a part of her, despite everything, couldn't help but feel something stir inside her, a strange growing attraction. Jungkook's eyes narrowed, an unreadable expression flashing across his face. Beautiful? You don't realize it, Ryan. But once the curse begins, you will see. You will see just how irresistible you will become. And you will just see how hard it will be for me to resist you. Her heart thud in her chest. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Every night she would change, become someone who could undo him, someone who could break him. It was cruel, intoxicating game the curse has set in motion. As the full moon cast its silvery light through the window, Ryan knew that tonight would be the beginning of a journey neither of them could control. The first night would be painful, but what comes after would be something far more dangerous, far more tempting. The night stretched on, the full moon casting its ethereal glow over the vast chamber of the castle. The curse binding them both loomed larger with every passing moment, and the weight of it hung in the air, thick and undeniable. Jungkook walked towards her slowly, his footstep heavy with purpose, yet his eyes softened when they met hers. I won't force you, he whispered, his voice filled with raw vulnerability. But you need to know the longer we resist, the stronger the curse become. You will change not just physically inside too. You will feel more powerful, irresistible. The weight of his words lingered in the air. She could see the conflict in his eyes. He was struggling against his own desire, the very thing the curse had been designed to provoke. But it was clear now this wasn't just about breaking the curse, it was about control, restraint, and survival for both of them. Vine felt a strange warmth rise within her as Jungkook gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing against her cheek. The connection between them was undeniable, but so was the fear that gripped her. Yet, midst of the uncertainty, there was also something else, a flicker of trust, trust in him, in the way he cared for her despite the darkness that surrounds them. We will take it slow, Jungkook murmured, his forehead resting against her, one step at a time. We will survive this together. As the hour passed, they were drawn closer. The pull of the curse is stronger either had anticipated. Jungkook had warned her, but nothing could have prepared her for the way the curse altered everything between them. Each time their bodies come together, it was not a battle, not just of a desire, but of restraint. Jungkook fought the urge to claim her completely, to surrender to the overwhelming pull of the curse. Yet each night she grew more beautiful, more radiant, and harder to resist. But with every struggle, there was tenderness, care, and understanding. Jungkook's touch was gentle, though it was clear he was in pain both physically and emotionally. His restraint was a reflection of how much he wanted to protect her. He could feel the curse pulling at him, urging him to take more, to claim her fully, but he resisted for her. I know this is hard, Jungkook whispered between soft kisses, his hand tracing the contour of her face, but we will get through it, you will see. And as the moonlight bathed the room, Vine realized that despite the pain, despite the curse, she had found something she hadn't expected, something far more powerful than desire. They were connected not just by fate, but by the trust they had started to build. The curse was a force to be reckoned with, but together they could face it one night at a time. The moon was full the night Jungkook first met her, the witch who would change his fate forever. She was nothing like the others he had encountered in his long, immortal life. Her beauty wasn't just extraordinary, it was otherworldly, a vision crafted by moon itself. Her eyes glowed with an enchanted light, and her raven black hair cascaded down her shoulder like waterfall of midnight silk. Her name was Selena, and from the moment she stepped into his path, Jungkook felt an undeniable pull. He had crossed paths with many beings in his time, fairies, demon, witches, but none like her. Yet, despite the pull she had on him, there was something about her beauty that left him indifferent. She was captivating, yes, but it was as if something within him had hardened against her allure. He had seen beauty before, too many times, in too many forms, and perhaps he had grown numb to it. Selena had approached him with a proposition that would change everything. She had waited for him, watching him from the shadow of the forest as she had always known he would come. Jungkook, she called to him softly one evening. Her voice was smooth as the night air. I have been waiting for you. He turned to face her, his eyes narrowing. You have been waiting for me. His voice was laced with suspicion. Yes, she smiled. A smile so alluring it seemed to steal the very breath from his lungs. I know what you are, and I know what you need. I can give it to you if you accept my proposal. Jungkook raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. And what is that you offer? You? Selena replied, her eyes locking into his unblinking. I offer you my heart, my soul, my beauty. Be my mate, and together we will rule this world. Her words hung in the air, and for a brief moment Jungkook felt a flicker of something, perhaps desire, perhaps curiosity. But it was fleeting like the wind. He wasn't moved by her beauty, her offer, or her power. He wasn't interested, not in her. I don't need a mate, Jungkook responded, his tone cold, distant, especially not one who believed beauty is enough to rule the world. Her smile flattered, but her eyes darkened, a glimmer of something dangerous flickering beneath the surface. You don't understand, do you? She murmured, her voice now carrying a chill that made the air itself seem to freeze. You think I am offering you a gift, but in truth, you are the one who has been offered something rare. You think beauty is trivial, but it is nothing. But it is everything. Power, control, it is the most potent force in the world, and yet you dismiss it. Jungkook's gaze hardened. He had seen too many powerful beings fall for such illusion, their heart consumed by pride and vanity. Beauty, he had learned, was fleeting. It could turn as quickly as it came, and he wasn't about to be swayed by it. Selena stepped closer, her presence like a storm. I offer you my gift, Jungkook, a gift of power, a gift of love. But since you refuse to see its value, I will make you see it. You will learn the price of beauty when it is something you cannot escape. Before he could react, her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with a force that sent a shock through his body. He tried to pull away, but it was too late. A wave of cold energy rushed through him, and he felt a weight settle deep inside him, a curse unlike anything he had ever known. You will learn to appreciate beauty, Selena whispered, her eyes glinting with malice. But not through admiration. You will be bound to it, trapped by it, unable to resist. And only when you break the curse, only when you finally find the one who can undo it, you will be free. Until then, you will crave what you once scorned and suffered for it every day of your life. The curse was casted. How Jungkook and Ryan will break the curse. To know more about his story, please subscribe. I will post next part on 16 December. Till then, bye bye. Take care.